chains all on your soul and put whips up on your back. They be lying through they teeth, hope you slip up off your path. I don't switch up, I just laugh. Put my kicks up on they desk, unaffected by...
Thank you guys for joining us for a special edition of the Sit Down with Malik Wright, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm joined by my man Ace. I'm joined by my man Eric. We've got Daniel, who's also going to be, filling in a couple times, talking about his opinions and things that he'd like to discuss regarding the draft. But more importantly, this is also about you guys. If you guys want to join in the discussion, as we do every single week, drop questions down in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them. But pretty much, guys, this is going to be a free-for-all. This is going to be a free-for-all where we give our opinions. We let you guys know where we stand on the boards. There are going to be some prospects that Ace like, that Eric likes, that I like, and we're not going to agree on them. We're not going to agree on them, but this is the platform where we're going to discuss them. We're going to break it all down. But before we jump into it, as we always say, if you guys do us a huge favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the First Star Logistics studio or in-home studio. But I guess the time for talk is over, guys. It's time to get into it a little bit. The Bengals have had a very interesting offseason. Obviously, we saw the departure of some Bengals favorites, guys like DJ Reader, guys like Tyler Boyd, who's still in the open market, so on and so forth. We also brought in new talents, guys like Sheldon Rankins, right? Mike Gesicki, who I'm extremely high on. I haven't talked with you guys and got your opinions on the Bengals offseason so far. So I want to open up the floor to kind of just start with that. Ace, I want to start with you, my man. For those of you who don't know, me and Ace, we've been brothers for a while, man. When I first made the transition over from Instagram over to Twitter, he welcomed me with open arms, man. And he was such a friend to me, and we have a friendship beyond just obviously the Bengals community. So, man, it's good to finally jump back on here and talk with you, brother. It's been long overdue. But what are your thoughts right now on the Bengals, offseason so far, prior to the NFL draft?
Yeah, I think they knocked it out the park. I mean, it wasn't one where they just completely just took over the offseason, but I think that they really did a lot of smart moves, a lot of bargain moves that really have left them in a position to have a lot of flexibility and a lot of maneuverability within the draft. You look at them bringing in Sheldon Rankins. Yes, they do lose a DJ Reader. However, obviously he went down with the injury. They were able to bring in a guy that could rush the passer in the interior from that standpoint. They were able to get a young guy in Geno Stone, which on the back end, we all saw how they struggled in the secondary last year. They were able to bring back a guy in Von Bell for really free, honestly. They were able to move on from Joe Mixon and bring in a guy in Zach Moss, and they didn't really commit long-term to these guys. So it kind of is a little bit of an experiment for these 1 to 2 year deals just to see if a Geno Stone last year was a fluke or if, the Zach Moss thing is a fluke. So I think they put themselves in a good position to be able to be flexible as well as be able to have all kind of moves open. And also, they were able to get younger in a lot of key positions. So I think what they've done thus far in this offseason, I think was a smart approach. And I'm excited to see what these pieces look like moving forward.
I agree, man. I think the best part about this whole thing is they didn't pigeonhole themselves going into the NFL draft. And we all have our favorite prospects, so what we want the Bengals to do. But as we know, it's drastically different from what we want the Bengals to do versus what they will do. But Eric, I got to ask you, my man, what's your opinion so far on the Bengals offseason, and where do you think they stand before, the NFL draft?
Man, I think, when we first lost DJ Reader, man, I really I took it hard, dude, honestly. The loss of DJ Reader, I thought it was like, man, how could we possibly replace DJ? But, it's almost like when you're in a toxic relationship and then you have to look back and reflect and kind of look over the entire, really the free agency roster for 2024 that we added. And you really just got to have a positive outlook and say, you know what? This team actually got better. If you look at it from a non-biased position or an emotional attached position is the way I looked at it before. You looked at a guy like Geno Stone, like Ace mentioned, Sheldon Rankins. We actually had an opportunity to talk to Mike Daniels in a space. And one guy Mike mentioned with Sheldon Rankins was an absolute dog. So to get him after hearing from Mike was awesome, man. I know Sheldon's going to be a dog. You talk about Zach Moss, which I think Zach is going to bring an element to this team that, first of all, Joe Mixon, incredible, heck of a career as a Bengal.
Yes.
And, but I believe that Zach Moss, man, I do think he can have some success running out of shotgun. And he's also a guy that if they're splitting reps between him and Chase Brown, it's not going to be too much of a big deal. I think Joe Mixon's a cat. He really got to touch the ball all the time. You know what I mean? But with Zach and Chase, you can kind of swap it there. And I think leading up to the draft, man, not to ramble, I think the Bengals are in prime position. Maybe you like to have gotten a true zero tech or, you know, a true nose presence going into the draft. But as we all know, the Bengals got 10 picks, man, and I think they're in a really good spot right now.
I agree with you, man. I agree with you. Let me ask you guys this question. What was your least favorite move by the Bengals this offseason? Not talking about losing anybody. Was there a least favorite move that the Bengals made that you're like, man, I don't understand the thought process with that?
I would probably say the fact that they didn't grab one of those corners. Like, I think, you know, them not addressing the cornerback position kind of put them in a little bit of a conundrum, especially in this draft with the options that could have been available. So I kind of would have liked to have seen them get in on one of those bargain corners and bring at least somebody else in the room. Obviously, with them losing Cheeto, you know, and having a young corner room with DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt, there isn't really that big of a veteran or a presence in there that you can truly depend on outside of those two. So I think I would have rather have seen them at least bring in, you know, maybe one veteran corner into that room, and maybe they'll do it down the line. But I think that's what I could have saw them kind of address in free agency that they didn't.
Yeah,
I feel that. What about you, Eric? What do you think?
Man, you know, I don't want this to come out wrong. I love Von Bell, man. Okay. When we lost Von Bell last year, I was like, Doc, this is a big loss for the team. First guy in, last guy out. He said he ran his own meetings on like Wednesdays or Tuesdays for the DBs. And like, that was a big deal to me. But you fast forward today, we got Jordan Battle, who just had one of his, you know, one of the better seasons as a rookie safety. And I hate to say I hate the move, but I do, because I feel like the development of Jordan Battle is almost kind of in question as a strong safety, man. And maybe he can learn from Vaughn, right? That's always a great opportunity as well, too. But he's got real competition, man. And I think Vaughn isn't coming here to hold water bottles.
I agree with you. I think that people probably downplayed the loss of Von Bell and the impact it would have on the Bengals considerably when you look at the communication issues that they had all last offseason. It's important that they got a veteran back and a guy that is familiar with the system, a guy that has had success in the system. And so, like, I understand where you're coming from, because it does seem like a crowded safety room. And so you have to wonder, okay, how is it all going to work? I have a hard time seeing Von Bell coming off the bench for anybody. I do know the Bengals obviously really, really value Jordan Battle, and that's a guy that I don't think his snaps will suffer at all. But I don't know if you guys watch a lot of Jordan Battle at Alabama and the way he was used, man. He was used all over the field, and he really was the leader of that Alabama safety room, especially when games when Branch was out. I saw there were a couple of games where Battle had either did not start the game, whether it be from suspension, because I know there was a couple of times where he had got the targeting call on him or whatever the case may be. But you noticed the Alabama defense took a step back without him on the football field. And the reason why I bring him up is because I think his floor is Von Bell. And I think his ceiling is beyond that. I think the guy is an absolute problem. And I think he's going to be a problem in this Bengals secondary. And I think he's the guy that I'm looking at in the room. And I'm like, man, you got to feel good about what his future might look like. But never mind all that, man. You know, I want to jump right into it, man. You know, we kind of got the small talk out of the way. Man, I'm gonna start this off, man. Y'all big Brock Bowers guys, all right? Y'all big Brock Bowers guys. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Yeah. Sell me on Brock Bowers, okay? Because let me tell you right now, when I see Brock Bowers, I see a 6'3" tight end, right? A guy that I think is talented. He's going to be great for some team. I don't think that team is going to be the Bengals. This is a team that has shown to neglect the tight end position. I understand what everybody's saying when they say, oh, he's a difference maker. He's a guy that can come in and be a game changer. But I want to hear from y'all. What's all the Brock Bowers hype about? Eric, you go first. I mean, I want to hear from you.
Man, it was about 3 years ago, man. I seen this cat, Brock Bowers. I think he was a freshman. I said, this cat is a freshman? And I just couldn't believe how talented he was, man, as the number one option on that Georgia team, and George Pickens was there. Fast forward today to the NFL draft. And, obviously you watched the draft last year. Obviously I was a Michael Mayer guy, okay? I don't know what it's about tight ends. I have been falling into a tight end kind of lull. I don't know what it is. But they had Michael Mayer. He went in the second. Sam Laporta went in the second. So I do believe that has impacted people's viewpoint on Brock Bowers and how successful or how talented he might be. I think when you look at a guy like a Brock Bowers and you look at what the Bengals do, mainly running 11 personnel, Brock really, although he's labeled as a tight end, when you look at his contract, he really he's just a little bit of a bigger receiver, right? Almost in the sense that I think I heard someone say on another show, we really need to look at Brock from a different standpoint, not so much a tight end, right? But a weapon. A guy like Brock Bowers playing next to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins would absolutely wreck the league. First of all, because he's probably drawing the third or fourth cover corner, safety, whatever you want to call it, right? And Brock Bowers is a mismatch for those guys. He's a mismatch for linebackers. He's a mismatch for safeties because of the way he runs routes. And truthfully, his superpower is his run after the catch. And I think the Bengals, right? Jamar Chase has some run after the catch ability. The Bengals can benefit from a guy who brings run after catch ability and can create natural mismatches with his talent in their system to exploit offenses. Because let's be real, all these defenses are playing the Bengals. They're playing too high shell, right? And they're saying, hey, we're not going to let them beat us deep. We're going to tackle up. So the Bengals need guys like that. And I think Brock Bowers fits in as weapon X for the Bengals. And I think that's why he would be so successful and why I think the Bengals should consider taking him if he's there.
Okay. Ace, what are your thoughts?
So I'm not really like the president of the Brock Bowers Club. That would be my co-host. That would be him. But I will say we have talked about this topic, and I've actually looked at some of the snaps and things like that, because the first thing that I'm thinking is just like E pointed out, 11 personnel. It's no secret that this is what this team runs. And to me, when you look at Brock Bowers, he isn't a guy that's an inline tight end. And so the initial thing that I looked at is, well, let me go back to Tyler Eifert, Zach's first year. How did they use Tyler Eifert? They used Tyler Eifert as a receiver. He was a slot receiver. He was lined up more in the slot and outside than he actually was as an inline tight end. That's what you could do with Brock Bowers. They did a little bit of that with Hayden Hurst. They didn't do as much. They didn't do that really with CJ Uzomah. I think he offers something that the Bengals have not had since Tyler Eifert. If you're going to bring this guy in, there is a chance, especially at 18, that he's the best available player. There's people saying that he's like a top 5 pick just in this draft class alone, especially if you take the quarterbacks out of it. So Brock Bowers, I think he offers a different dimension, and he's a guy that can play with Mike Gesicki, right? Like, he's not a guy that you have to have Mike Gesicki on the field and him off the field so his snaps are minimized. He's a guy that can split out wide. He's a mismatch nightmare. And when you take these guys that we used to have with the Tyler Boyds, the Jamar Chases, and the T. Higgins, and you put a Brock Bowers into that spot where Tyler Boyd used to be at, that is a matchup nightmare. I mean, we've seen it with what the Chiefs have been able to do with Travis Kelce. Now, I'm not going to say that he's on that level, because obviously the tight end position has been hit or miss. But if he is that, this is a guy that not only is able to stand out on the field, but also from a financial situation, which this was brought up by Solomon Wilcox. Say he is a receiver, but we just call him tight end. At the end of the day, he's going to be significantly cheaper in terms of keeping this core together if that's what you opt to do. So Brock Bowers, to me, I think is a guy that can have an immediate impact and do his thing. I understand why some people would look at it and say, hey, he's just a tight end, but he is special. I would say that he would have an immediate impact, and I think you would keep a lot of defensive coordinators up at night losing sleep over how they're going to stop Jamar Chase, Brock Bowers, and T. Higgins.
Man, I like both of the points that you guys made. Here's one thing that I want to talk about, address. I feel like there's a lot of people out there trying to justify a Brock Bowers selection while tearing down Mike Gesicki's potential in the Bengals offense. And often what I hear people talk about and say is, oh, Mike Gesicki isn't a great blocker. Brock Bowers isn't a great blocker. But that's neither here nor there. We're not going to go tit for tat, right? Whoever the Bengals draft or were to draft at a tight end position, they're coming in to be that receiving threat at the tight end spot. Right. They already have their blocking tight end on their roster who they spent and overdrafted and Drew Sample, who earned himself the contract that he just got. But they've already got that sort of blocking tight end on the roster. Anybody that they were to add to the roster would have to be something different and offer something in the receiving game because this is a pass-happy offense. So when I try to tell people that, and I bring up Mike Gesicki without even, shooting down Brock Bowers, because if we're being realistic, I don't think Brock Bowers is even going to be there. I don't think there's any chance that he's going to be there. But what I'll say is, Mike Gesicki, let's talk about Mike Gesicki for a second and why I'm so high on him, guys. I'm from New Jersey. I've been watching Mike Gesicki since he was in high school. And I'm going to tell y'all right now, the dude performed at Penn State. He performed in Miami when Ryan Tannehill was his quarterback, even when Tua was his quarterback. He has been the product of a system that does not favor tight ends. You look at the numbers that every tight end put up in the Miami Dolphins system under Mike McDaniels, they struggle. They don't put up great numbers at all because that's just not their offense. It's quick. It's quick passes. And it's funny, I was talking with Parker Blake and we were talking about Jackson Powers Johnson and why we don't feel like he's necessarily this strong anchor everybody views him as in the interior of the offensive line is because how Oregon's offense is quick twitch, if you will. And Miami's offense is kind of set up the same. And I bring that point up because a tight end will never do great in that style of offense because you've got to get open. It's a receiver-friendly offense, right? Mm-hmm. You tell me what tight end at Oregon put up big numbers. It's because they're trying to get their receivers open in space. They're trying to have their running backs run outside zone. It's not a lot of the downhill running. It's not a lot of the go through 1, 2, 3, and then check down to the tight end. It's a lot of quick passes, and I think people are losing sight of that. That's why when Mike McDaniel took over the Dolphins offense, the numbers went down for Mike Gesicki. He decided he was going to leave. He thought New England was going to be the spot for him. He was sold as if he was going to have a chance to break out. And lo and behold, Bill Belichick brings the old defense coordinator in as the offensive coordinator. Every chance Mike Gesicki got with the New England Patriots, he performed. He showed up. Yeah. He would make miraculous one-handed catches and contested catches. And then you might not see him for the rest of the game. We don't know what the reason is for that. But I'll make the argument, and maybe it's not even an argument. I think that Joe Burrow, screw it. I think that this Bengals offense is the best offense Mike Gesicki has ever played in that's going to be conducive to his skill set. I'll also go a step further, and I don't think in high school, college, or at the NFL level, Joe Burrow has ever played with the tight end such as Mike Gesicki. I think Mike Gesicki, and I've told this to people, I think he instantly comes in, no shot at T. Higgins, no shot at Charlie Jones, no shot at Yoshi Voss. I think he instantly comes in and probably has the second best hands on the team. This is a guy that can make all the contested catches. His catch radius is unbelievable. He is what you would want in a tight end. I'll go a step further, guys, and maybe I'm just, blowing smoke, but I think that Mike Gesicki is going to be the best tight end the Bengals have had since Tyler Eifert. I genuinely believe that because he is a matchup nightmare. You no longer have the issues necessarily in the red zone if Jamar Chase is being doubled or if T. Higgins is not playing or if he's being doubled. You now have a tight end who you could slide out there and say, yo, take your best corner, cover him. Let's see what happens. Take your linebacker, cover him, see what happens. Take your safety, cover him, see what happens. Mike Gesicki is a true threat, and it sucks, and it shows how being in a bad situation can tank your value so much. How being in a bad situation can tank your value so much. I genuinely believe, though, man, Mike Gesicki is going to put up some crazy, unreal numbers. And I think just like Trent Brown signing, Mike Gesicki signing allows you to be more flexible. It allows you to be more flexible. And that's the thing I'm most excited about. Sure, I'm excited about Joe Burrow being healthy. I'm excited about the Bengals receiving core being back together for another year. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited about Mike Gesicki's potential in this offense because this is a dude. If y'all remember last year, I was like, Gesicki to the natty. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
And then, I was telling several people, man, this is a move that I think is an absolute no-brainer. And there's no shot at any of the tight ends the Bengals have had, whether it be a Irv Smith, whether it be a Hayden Hurst. This dude is just different, and he's done it. This is a dude we've seen have back-to-back 700-plus yard seasons in the National Football League. We've seen him put up the high ratio of touchdowns. We've seen him perform. We just haven't seen him in this style of offense. So, man, I'm excited. Barring everybody staying, healthy, man, I think this Bengals offense could be absolutely different. I think the running back spot is definitely a sore spot where I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, man, Joe Mixon was my guy. I don't, I'm hopeful that Zach Moss can kind of build upon the year that he had last year, and Chase Brown and him could be that 1-2 punch. But it's one of those things where we just got to see it,
Yeah.
we it's one of those things where we've just got to see it. We've got to see it to believe it. But I guess that brings to my next question, guys. Let's play a little game. Brock Bowers is on the clock. Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton are on the clock. Who you drafting?
Ace, you want to go first, man?
Yeah. So the one thing I will say is Mike Gesicki does have a lot of potential in this offense, right? And I completely get that. I completely agree that he might be the best tight end that Joe Burrow has possibly played with, right? But is he back for next season? Is this still going to be the revolving door at tight end that it has been 3 years in a row? Is he committed to the Bengals long term?
Like our old Instagram. Let's go there. Let's talk about that. It's
Is
not like you got drafted by a team, right? You know what it's like, life outside of Cincinnati. Let's see he pops off this year. He does great. You already know what life outside of Cincinnati is like. You know the grass isn't always greener.
For sure.
So why would you leave? Why would you leave?
Hayden Hurst did. Hayden Hurst thought it was
100%.
It was a bigger bag. It was a bigger bag in Carolina, man. So,
but I will say Cincinnati didn't try. I could tell you that Cincinnati did not try. I know the people who believe they tried. Cincinnati did not try. They offered him something, but it was not a serious offer at all. And it was like, all right, well, I'm gonna offer this. All right, see ya. Yeah. It's like, I think that what Gesicki's gonna bring to the table is way different from Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst would have flashes, man, but it wasn't a lot of consistency with it, if that makes sense. It was like, all right, check downs, run for like 10 yards. Maybe like he'd be good for like maybe 35, 40 yards a game.
Yeah.
If he had like a 80-yard game, we're like, whoa, okay, Hayden Hurst popped off. Like that Bills game in the playoff. We were like, okay, Hayden Hurst showed up. But and I hate to be that guy because I wish the guy well. But everywhere he's went, whether it be with Baltimore, obviously they drafted the freaking Mark Andrews that same draft, who beat him out for the job. Then he went to Atlanta and he had a year there, and then he got beat out. The next year they drafted Kyle Pitts. Yeah. It's like every time he lands somewhere, the next year he got replaced. Right. So he was really never able to, have solid footing anywhere in the National Football League.
This sounds a little like Hayden Hurst. I don't know.
No. I'm saying that's Hayden. That's what I'm saying. That's Hayden Hurst.
For sure.
No. Yeah, Mike Gesicki was putting up numbers in Miami. He put up.
Mike Gesicki. Don't get me wrong. Like Mike Gesicki's a way better tight end. Is Cincinnati becoming this place where guys like CJ Uzomah and guys like Hayden Hurst can run it up and go and get a bag somewhere else? Like, if he's willing to commit here, then I'm good with it. Like, if he's like, all right, cool, I did my 700-800 yards, I got my 5, 6, 7 touchdowns, I'm here in the natty and I'm willing to take maybe not the largest contract that might be on the market, then I'm good with it. But the one thing I do not want to do next offseason is, who are we signing at tight end again? Like, it's been 100%. Like that, right? This revolving door. But to get back to your question, Byron Murphy, Brock Bowers, or Johnny Newton, that's a tough one right there. I'm gonna say this, man, and I said this because I kind of felt like there was a chance guys like DJ Reader could leave and the identity of the Bengals could change. Like, we signed all of these defensive players. They're kind of getting into the later stages of their contract. To me, I think you got to go all in on offense. Like for me right now, I'm going all in. If Joe Burrow's the guy and I'm putting all of this, and that goes for more than just skill players, that's offensive line and all of that. I'm turning into the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning back in the day, bro. I'm going to have maybe one or two elite defensive players, but I'm putting everything on the offense. And I love Byron Murphy and I love Johnny Newton. Here's my issue with that. We just signed Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill. How many snaps are these guys realistically going to get in a Lou Anarumo defense where we just saw Miles Murphy and guys like Joseph Osai barely play and Zach Carter's still there? I love them. I think Byron Murphy can be a very special player. I think Johnny Newton can. But at the end of the day, and Solomon Wilcox, I got to bring him up. He brought this up last year as well. Last year, they didn't struggle with rushing the passer. That wasn't the issue for the defense last year. They just couldn't cover anybody on the back end. So for me, if you have a special player like Bowers available, even if it's Brian Thomas, bro, I'm going with the offensive player. That's just
You've been beating that drum.
I'm going with the offensive player.
I respect.
Eric, let me hear from you.
Man, you know I'm a Brock Bowers guy through and through, man, but I also have been hanging my hat on the Byron Murphy train as of late, man. And, man, if Brock was there, I just, I hate to say it, but I just couldn't see any way possible I could pass on a Brock Bowers, man, only because, and I don't think first of all, I like Mike Gesicki too, but I think Brock Bowers, a lot of people want a receiver in this draft. I think you can slot Brock in as a slot to take Tyler Boyd's slot. And I think he's more effective than Tyler Boyd was last year. And I think he can be a starter day one, kind of like Ace was saying, man. And I can see the argument for Byron or Brock a lot in this situation. But I always go back to Jamar Chase and the Penei Sewell conversation, right? Right? You see that graphic, they say, hey, you draft Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow's going to be on the ground. You get Penei Sewell, no matter who out there, he's going to complete the pass. Right or wrong, whatever you want to say today, Jamar Chase at that point was the most impactful player at that spot, and he helped the Bengals go right to the Super Bowl. I believe Brock Bowers is a top 5 player in this draft class. And I think if he was maybe targeted or labeled as a receiver, we could be talking about him going off the board a lot earlier. Now, he didn't run the 40 because he's probably a little bit slower than 4.4. But I just, for me, it would be tough to pass on Brock. So I would take Brock there, man.
I'm going to cook for a second.
Go ahead.
But before I do, I've been yapping away. Daniel, I want to hear your opinion, man, on what you think about this scenario. If Brock Bowers, Johnny Newton, and Byron Murphy were on the board. So the floor is yours.
All right. So I think the conversation I want to have is the wide receivers and the tight end, because this is how I view it personally. I think Brock Bowers is a very talented guy. In my opinion, I think Neighbors, Harrison, and Rome Odunze are far better talents than a guy like Brock Bowers. And when I'm looking at a guy like Brian Thomas, like Ace, I'm telling you, I loved his film as well. For me, the conversation is, what's the difference between a Brian Thomas at 18 or a Keon Coleman at 48? And that's, for me, what I'm having the discussion, right? A Brock Bowers at 18 or having Mike Gesicki as my tight end. I'm looking at what is the replacement for me. And I'm going to be honest, I look at the defensive line. Like, we can obviously talk about the defensive tackles, but even the edge rushers, the Bengals are going to give Miles Murphy a chance. But if Alatu or Jared Verse is on the board, am I getting that type of production out of a Cam Sample? No, I'm not. Am I getting that type of, potential out of a free agent edge rusher? No, I'm not. So for me, that's how I view it personally. I look at the defensive line. You look at the Super Bowl, right? How did the Chiefs win the Super Bowl? Obviously, you have Patrick Mahomes, but Chris Jones made big-time plays. How did the Rams beat us in the Super Bowl? Aaron Donald made big-time plays. For me, when I look at roster construction, I think Brock Bowers is a great talent. I think the wide receiver position needs to be addressed as well because, T. Higgins in the future. But guys, to be honest, I think if you can add an edge rusher opposite of Trey Hendrickson, or you can add an interior guy like a Jerzon Newton to have a Geno Atkins type of, impact on the defense, in my opinion, that's what I would value over a guy like Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers is very talented, but I think what you can replicate with a guy like Gesicki, I mean, we saw it with Hayden Hurst. We saw it with CJ Uzama. So for me, that's how I view it. I view the defensive line so highly. And I think like Zach Carter last year, like Ace, you brought up, the snaps, right? I still think that even year one, Jerzon Newton would play a lot of snaps. So that's how I view it personally. I think defensive line and Verse, Latu, Jerzon, and Byron Murphy, for sure the first three, I think all three of those can change the face of the defense with Trey Hendrickson. So like that's how I view it. I think Brian Thomas is a very good wide receiver once again. But like for me, and this is my question to you guys, is the drop-off between a Brian Thomas and a Keon Coleman and a Brock Bowers and a Gesicki, is the drop-off in that production more than a defensive tackle or an edge rusher? What do you guys think?
Man, Brian Thomas I like Keon Coleman. Brian Thomas to me just takes the top off of this offense. Like it makes it so hard for them to be able, like any team, to be able to defend the Bengals. Gesicki Gesicki's already proven, and tight end is so volatile. So like you can sit here and say, oh, like Michael Mayer is going to be this, Dalton Kincaid is going to be that. Like at the end of the day, we don't know because they don't have the greatest resume. It's tough because I also feel like this draft is full of defensive interior players. Like you can talk about Rook, you can talk about Mason Smith, you can talk about Dwayne Carter as well. And to me, like I think that those two guys are at the top, but I think it's a similar kind of similarity to like the drop that there would be at receiver from Brian Thomas to those guys. I mean, I think because receiver is so loaded, I'm just going to be honest. I think you could still get a good receiver in round 2, 3, maybe even 4, just because of how loaded. It's the strongest position in this draft class. So I would agree with you on receiver. Tight end is a little murky because after, like if you are saying Mike Gesicki, I'm assuming that we're assuming that he's going to be healthy the whole season. If he isn't healthy and you're saying like he's out of game and we're back to kind of the situation we were in last season, and you're talking about looking at this draft class and you're talking about the difference between a Brock Bowers and like a Theo Johnson, that's a huge kind of gap for me in terms of like, if we didn't take Brock Bowers, I'm probably chilling on tight end until about like round 4 or 5. Like unless it's Jatavion Sanders, I like him too. That would be the only other guy. So for tight end, I'm just not so sure just because of, number one, I don't know if Gesicki is here long-term. So I don't know if he's here for the future. And then if there is an injury or something like that, I don't know if I trust whoever the Bengals would get in around 4 or 5, especially after I thought Drew Sample was going to be not just a blocking tight end. I'll just put it nicely, not just a blocking tight end. So no, I completely get where you're coming from. So I would agree on receiver. I'd agree, I think, kind of on D tackle to a point, because I do think that there's some good guys out there like Dwayne Carter. Like there's a lot of good D tackles that I like that I would be okay with if I did take Bowers in round 1. So I think that's where I'm at with it.
Man, I think it's a phenomenal question, Daniel. And I think for me, I love Keon Coleman, man. I really do. I think he's going to be a lot better than what a lot of people think he'll be in the league, because a lot of people are down on him because of the separation we're talking about. But I think it's a little bit of context behind the whole story of that. But I do think Brian Thomas, I do think the Brian Thomas to Keon Coleman gap is a little wider than, what we may think. I'm not even a Brian Thomas guy. I do think Brian Thomas has a bigger impact for the team he goes to next year than a Keon Coleman would. But when you look at Brock Bowers and Mike Gesicki, now here's the thing. I like Gesicki too. And I'm not saying Brock Bowers is here to take Gesicki's job. I'm actually saying, hey, guess what, Gesicki? We love you, dude. We're going to play some 12 personnel. We're going to get tight ends on the field. We're going to use you as a move tight end. We're going to have Brock play the Y or the H back. You know what I mean? And then we're going to get creative and find ways to put different sets out here for defenses and get you both on the field. So I don't necessarily, and maybe eventually he would impede into Mike Gesicki's snaps, but I don't think you would bring Brock in to necessarily compete or take Mike's spot. You would be bringing him in to have like an addition to, almost similar to how the Buffalo Bills say, hey, look, we got Kincaid, we got Dawson Knox. Let's go ahead and run a little bit more 12 personnel, and let's dictate to the defense what they're going to do, because we're showing a little bit bigger personnel now, right? But we still got weapons out here. You watch Mike Gesicki back in New England, maybe he doesn't get the ball, but he's running a whip route or he's running a quick out, and Mike runs like a receiver, runs like a gazelle. You know what I mean? So I could see – I love that question that you asked, man, but I just think when you talk about those players in the gaps, I just think of Brock Bowers, man. The difference between the rest of the class, it is that huge to me. And he might even be, and I'm not to ramble, but he might be near the top, man, in explosive plays, including the receivers in this class. When you talk about Neighbors, Harrison, Adunze, you know what I mean? Brock is up there with those guys in explosive plays.
I'm going to say this because we've been talking, a lot about the tight end position. Yeah. I'll say this again because I see people saying, why are we even talking about tight ends? Because it is an important topic, because there's been a revolving door at the tight end position for the Bengals the last couple of years. But what I'm going to talk about is the defensive line for a second. Now, we're all here basketball fans. We're all NBA fans.
For sure.
This is the best comparison I can give my viewpoint on the Bengals' interior defensive line. So what happened? All right, I think we got a special guest in the back office, man. I know people have been waiting for this, man. So without further ado, we're joined by Zim. What's good, fam? I think you're on mute, man. Can't hear you.
Nah, I didn't want to like laugh over top of you. What's going on, man? How
What's
you doing?
What's going on, bro, man? This is long overdue.
Yes, sir.
I'm happy
how you fellas doing
on here and talk about this. But yeah, man. So the point I was trying to make was I view the Bengals interior defensive line like the Toronto Raptors. And what I mean by that is there's a bunch of good role players, right? But there's nobody that's actually standing out to take the defensive line on the interior side over the top. I'm cool. Sheldon Rankins, the Bengals added him. Great addition. Most of his sacks came against who? Us. Yeah. Most of his sacks came against us. I don't think enough people are talking about that. So I think a lot of people are acting as if we got this monster who's just great at rushing the passer. He goes missing at times. He shows up when he's supposed to, but he also goes missing at times. BJ Hill goes missing at times. He shows up too. Think about this. Put yourself in the Rams' shoes. Put yourself in the Dolphins' shoes when they had Ndamukong Suh. You think they was really out there like, oh my God, we need to make sure we add a nose tackle? No, they wasn't worried about that because they had a guy that could do both things. They had a guy that could rush the passer. They had a guy that could stop the run. And it made life hell for the entire National Football League. The Bengals have been trying to replace the beast in Geno Atkins since he left here. They've tried. And what was said to me directly this offseason, we are trying to recreate the Larry Ogunjobi, BJ Hill tandem, from the Super Bowl. What that tells me is you don't view these two as playing next to each other. If the chance and the opportunity came, because I know that there are two defensive tackles that they like in this class, if the chance and the opportunity came to upgrade on the interior of the defensive line, they would take it. If they could get a guy that was great at rushing the passer, stopping the run, they would do it. Now, here's the thing. I think right now, as it stands today, I think that Jerzon Newton gives them more in the pass rush department than Byron Murphy. I think the ceiling, though, belongs to Byron Murphy. I think Byron Murphy has the ability to be the best defensive tackle in the National Football League. I think Jerzon Newton, if I could be honest, I think he's always going to be that guy that has the production, but a lot like how Geno Atkins was, I don't know if he'll ever get the love, the national media love. But we don't care about that. We want a guy that can come in here that can stop the run, rush the passer, and make life easier on the edge, because that's what the Bengals are banking on. They're like, yo, if we can get more pressure in the interior, it'll make life easier for Trey. It'll make life easier for Sam Hubbard. I don't know if I believe that necessarily as regards to Sam Hubbard,
Right.
but and I also want to address this too. Some people put in the comment section saying they're not sure if Murphy, meaning Miles Murphy, is not a bust. I don't know if we were watching the same games. I saw so many flashes from Miles Murphy this last offseason. Last season. I'm not sure where we are, starting this discourse that Miles Murphy didn't have several flashes, whether he was rushing from the edge, whether he was rushing from the interior. It felt like, at least the last couple of weeks of the season, he was getting pressure on the quarterback almost every single game. Whenever he got his opportunity, whenever he got his number called, it seemed like he showed up. So I'm very high on Miles Murphy. I think Miles Murphy has a lot to offer. And I do think at some point, he's probably going to replace Sam Hubbard's snaps, and he might insert himself in there as a start. And you need that, because guess what? There are people in the chat that are also saying, oh, we don't need edge. We do need edge. Pass rush is something you can never have enough of, man. And I think sooner or later, before you look up, Trey Hendrickson is kicking 30 in the ass, right? When you look up, you might be like, oh my God, Trey Hendrickson is up for contract again. Well, who is replacing him? People are like, well, we have Joseph Asai. Well, we've been saying that same exact thing for the last couple of years.
Right.
At what point do we get real? See, the one thing I like about the group that is on this live right now, we're gonna tell it like it is. We're not gonna cut any corners. I like the players. Me and Dax Hill was inside the store shopping for the same exact TV the other day. It was cool. It was nice chopping it up. But if we being real, like, it's okay to talk about deficiencies that are on this roster. Do not tell me the Bengals had a good pass rush last year. We didn't. We struggled. When Trey Hendrickson's not on the field, and every single game, it feels like Trey Hendrickson is walking off the field holding his side of his hips because he's hurt, because dudes is ramming into his ribs and whatnot. Who else is offering that pass rush? That's why it was so good to see Miles Murphy start to take that next step. And I'm excited to see the next step he's going to take this upcoming year. But I'm going to stop rambling, man. I said what I said, man. I think that if you're able to get a game-changing guy, think about when the Raptors went out and they traded for Kawhi Leonard. What happened that same year? They won a championship, right? Because when I look at the Toronto Raptors, they have a bunch of guys that are good role players. Pascal Siakam, good player, right? Precious Achiuwa, good player. They had nobody that was going to take that team over the top. They got Kawhi Leonard in there, took them over the top. Now, that's neither here nor there.
Are you calling Brock Bowers like Kawhi Leonard?
No. I ain't even talking about Brock Bowers right now. I'm talking about the Bengals, the interior defensive line. Right now, they don't got a game changer. Who's the game changer? And there's been such a focus put on nose tackle. Nose tackle wasn't like a big thing for the Bengals before. They had D'Amato Pecco. They had other guys, but we just had an elite nose tackle. So that's why we're being hyper focused when it comes to the nose tackle position. But if you get a guy that can stop the run, that can rush the passer, you're not talking about, oh, we need an elite nose tackle, because the nose tackle is a sort of becoming a dying breed in the National Football League. You want a guy, most teams want a guy that could do both. They want guys that could do both. But Zim, I'm gonna let you have the floor, bro. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I know you're a big Brock Bowers guys. People wanted this back and forth, this discourse. Let's give it to them.
You know what's so crazy? I think this is the part that I think you're missing too, is that your fan base is big Brock Bowers people. The fan base. Go look at any poll that's currently right now on the internet. So they ain't just them. It's everybody telling you. And you know what? I think my page is so volatile. It's so like it's just so over the top sometimes.
Yep.
You get a chance in the comments to get real reactions from the opposition, and I ain't never ever once had anybody, no op, ever come into any comment section or anything I've ever posted and said, "Man, I would hate for y'all to go get any of the dudes that Murphy, Newton, none of that stuff." You know, if I post anything about Brock Bowers, you know what everybody and their mother is saying it? All thousands of them come running to the comment section and say, he's not going to be there. There's no way he's going to be there, bro. Because their biggest fear and their coping mechanism for all of this is the fear of Brock Bowers playing on the same football field as Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase, even if it's for 1 year, and Gesicki. Throw that in there. And you know what I'm saying? You're throwing all that all in one thing. Come on, bro. Like, this dude is very different. I heard you talking about him earlier too. And the run blocking portion, I didn't agree with it as well too. I think he's very underrated at that part. I think you could bring him in line, and he could actually share the field with Gesicki. A lot of the things that he does are some things that we've never ever had as Bengals fans. Like Tyler Eifert never gave us the point blocks on the perimeter that Brock Bowers would if you cut on any of them Georgia games. Brock Bowers, there's an argument that he's probably the greatest tight end in college football history. Just think about it. It is a strong argument. He's the only tight end that's won the Mackey Award twice in the history of college football. He had a receiving grade over 94, the highest in PFF history. His receiving yards are over 20 since 2014. I'm gonna just start right there. His receiving yards is at 2,541, the most in college football history in that time frame. Receiving touchdowns at 26, the highest. Receiving yards after contact, 689. No tight end has ever even been that close. He's probably the greatest yak tight end of all time. Missed forced tackles, 44. The closest person is at 33. The dude is very, very special. And I say all that to say that I think that Byron Murphy is special, and I think that Johnny Newton is special as well too. And I think all of those dudes will be like day one contributors and be able to impact this team.
I hear you. I guess my rebuttal to that is, I think when I speak regarding Brock Bowers, I'm looking at it from the lens, nobody that I talk to is expecting him to be there. Nobody is. The Jets seem to have him penciled in, and they seem to really love the guy. But even more so, I understand the point that you're coming from, Brock Bowers, how talented of a college career that he had. I look at things from the Bengals lens. And I always tell people there's how we would do things. There's things that we view and from our lens, and there's the way the Bengals view things. And the way the Bengals do things are drastically different. Every move that this team makes, and you guys know this, you guys have been covering the Bengals. Every move that they make is not to pigeonhole themselves when they get to the NFL draft. So the Mike Gesicki signing that they made was so they don't feel like they have to press for a tight end. The Trent Brown signing was so they don't feel like they need to press for a right tackle. The one move that they didn't necessarily really press for, because I think people are looking at Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill like they'll be starting next to each other, is the defensive tackle spot. Getting a true, quote unquote, as everybody been saying, nose tackle. It's the reason why if a guy like Tyler Tart is you don't feel is a good culture fit, all right, you move on and you move forward. I look at it and I say, this is a team that's been trying to replace Geno Atkins. They've been trying to get their guy because defensive tackle has become a premium position in the National Football League because you see how much money these guys are making when they finally do hit the open market. And when you look at it from that lens, well, it might behoove them to probably go that route because for the last couple of drafts, they've been shot in the foot. They were like, we pray Kalijah Kancey is there when we draft. He wasn't there.
You know who else they wanted? Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, that's true. That's
so you
that's
said
100% true.
you said that they drastically do something different than what we think, but that's not true. That they would have took Dalton Kincaid if he was there.
I believe they would have took Kalijah Kancey if he was there.
The only thing I would say is if we're going off of what the Bengals have done, then they wouldn't take a D tackle in the first round because they haven't
done it in 30 years.
That would be drastically different from what they've done lately.
The last D tackle that they took was Dan Wilkerson in 1994 or something like that. So it's been 30 years since they took a first round tackle.
They never took a safety in the first round. They did with Dax Hill. So I'm not saying that they wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying
I would do it, and I would do it. I would get Murphy. I think Murphy day one impact. You're splitting snaps with BJ Hill and Rankins, and I think that's part of a good, combination. I just think because BJ Hill's getting paid so much money, you got to follow the snaps. Like they're not going to give think about this. DJ Reader at his highest point averaged 509 snaps every season with the Bengals, right? 509 snaps. And we all agree that he's probably the best nose probably in football. Now, yes. I know this is a different position, but think about it. You think that a guy coming out like a rookie coming out of nowhere is about to come out of the womb and just hit the field and just take over D tackle and have more snaps than DJ Reader? I don't think so. But his impact could be felt. I think the rotation of him, probably like the Zach Carter snaps last year was close to 500. So I think there's an argument that you could say, yeah, I'm going to give you the majority of those snaps, but I got Rankins now. Like, it's part of a rotation. So the impact of it, I don't know. It would have to come with sacks. It would have to come with pressures, and it would have to be like instant impact. And I think starting week 1, Newton and Murphy, I do think that they would get on the field, but they're not starting over BJ Hill or Rankins. Day 1, Brock Bowers get drafted early on at that point right there. I get what you're saying about Gesicki. Gesicki can only be flexed out. Brock Bowers represents something that the Bengals haven't had in a very long time, and it's the uncertainty of what they're about to do. The Bengals are the most predictable offense in the NFL. They run 11 personnel 70% of the time. When we went to the AFC Championship game, the easiest thing to do was to double the outsides. Tyler Boyd goes out, you're cooked. Brock Bowers represents a matchup nightmare. Can you imagine Mike Hilton trying to guard Brock Bowers? Can you imagine a linebacker trying to guard Brock Bowers? The difference between Brock Bowers or even Michael Mayer last year or any of these guys is because of the situation that he would be in, and the amount of resources that you're putting in front of him are very different than Brock Bowers going to a bum team. If he went to a bum team, sure, he would get double team. You have a safety coming out. You can't do that with the Bengals because, I'm going to piggyback off of your point. I'll have Mike Gesicki stretching the seams. I dare you to go run with him. If you do that, then I'm out in the flat, and I just told you that he's the greatest jack tight end of all time. What do you think is going to happen to him out in the flat? I'm cooking. And I got Chase Brown coming on the other side. I got the wide receivers on the end. Part of keeping Joe Burrow healthy is the uncertainty of what they're about to do. If you go to the same thing that you've been doing and running 11 every single time and thinking that now that Gesicki is out there as just a receiving threat, making you predictable, it doesn't change the fact that the defense is still pinning their ears back. You have to get the defenses in a situation where now you have a tight end that's in line, that's not Drew Sample, that's able to run out on routes and be able to make defenses pay, and then make you take that safety and come down into the box, grab the seam. I want you to make decisions, and they've never had that ability since I don't even know when. I don't know.
Well, let's go a step further. See, the cool thing about what you're saying is what I'm saying, I think we're agreeing a little bit more than we're disagreeing, but let's talk about it. When I see that this coaching staff, Zach Taylor, I saw a coaching staff last year that completely neglected the tight end position throughout the entire draft. So I'm supposed to believe that this same coaching staff is now going to be like, whoa, we know we just signed Mike Gesicki, but we're going to draft the tight end in the first round because he's generational, even though he didn't test, even though he's coming off of an injury and has these question marks. I'm supposed to believe that. No, I don't believe that. What I do believe is I think that those 30 years you're talking about, we have to talk about it and say, well, 16 of those years were Marvin Lewis. 16 of those years of Marvin Lewis. This is a guy who didn't believe in even playing rookies. He gave rookies a hard-ass time to even get on the football field. When I see a guy like Zach Taylor, I see, all right, they may have liked Dalton Kincaid. They also really like Sam Laporta. They really like Sam Laporta. They were one of the first teams to interview Sam Laporta. They did a lot of homework on Sam Laporta. They had him highly graded. If you really value the tight end position the way you said you did, you would have made some type of movement to make sure that guy was a Bengal and he didn't fall to the Lions where he did. You neglected the tight end position in totality. But what you have shown every single offseason in the Zach Taylor area is, hey, we're going to try to fix the what? Defensive tackle position. Which is why they begged Jerron Reed to become a Bengal year after year, and he would take visits and he just wouldn't sign with them. And then they say, hey, you know what? This year, we're going to try to recreate the magic that got us to the Super Bowl. What was said to me on a phone call was, I don't believe that either one of those defensive tackles are going to be there, because the talk coming out of the combine was Byron Murphy could potentially be the first defensive player off the board. That's how that guy's testing. So you mean to tell me if that guy falls to this team at 18, knowing they've had an issue with rushing the passer from the interior side of things, they wouldn't run to the podium and draft that guy? Of course they would. It's a no-brainer. No shot at Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers is going to go on to have a fantastic career, but I also want to deal with the land of reality. Mike Gesicki was signed here to be the tight end of the Bengals. The Bengals have proven under the Zach Taylor area they do not give a rat's ass about the tight end position and truly investing in it. Now, Duke told me, he looked me in my eye, he said, this year, we plan to have answers for that. So guess what? I hope he does. I pray he does. Because guess what? We've seen Irv Smith come through here. We've seen CJ Uzomah come through here. We've had Drew Sample, do what he does, with his former college quarterback. We've had so many people at the tight end position be the revolving door where what Mike Gesicki represents to me is the guy that has actually proven to do it. Irv Smith, potential. Hayden Hurst, potential. Because every chance he got to prove that he could do it, at most, what did he have? 400 some odd yards in a season? Mike Gesicki, we've seen him put up those, great numbers that we're looking for from the tight end position. Unfortunately, I think the receiver spot will always take precedent in a Zach Taylor's offense over a tight end. I understand where you're coming from, Zim. I understand what you're saying, and what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But what this team has shown, what this regime has shown, is tight end ain't that big of a focal point. As much as I would say that it's being talked about amongst the Bengal community, I think we should probably talk about tight ends that are in the later round. And I don't know why they're not talked about. Whether
why
it be
why we not talking about D tackles in the later round?
That's what
the drop off is huge. That's why
too.
the drop off is huge. Jim, we're getting right back to the spot in the later rounds. We're getting back to guys that do specific things great. You mean to tell me if Byron Murphy or Jerzon Newton is there that can rush the passer and stop the run and do things, at a great rate, you wouldn't draft one of those two guys? You want to wait until the later rounds and draft a Ruka Koro, who, by the way, I believe has zero upside pass rushing. Okay. That's just me. I think he has zero upside pass rushing.
I think it's all strategies and perspectives. Yeah. So your strategy is go for the home run, one guy, and you're probably not going to get another guy until later on. I have a different strategy that I think could work. I think guys like Michael Hall Jr. have shown me a lot from an early age that I believe in his production, and I think that he could contribute right away. I think he could rush the passer right away. There are guys that are out there like Roop that you just named that I think are very multiple. Darius Robinson. There's all these different guys that are in that second crop that aren't that far off to me. If you hear a lot of these people talking about Johnny Newton, a lot of people are giving him a grade at the back of the first, right? And some people are giving him like mid-round. He's kind of like all over the place. The gap between him and the Roots of the world or what, I don't know how you feel about Fist or any of these guys like that. The gap from that.
I seen that guy get bullied a lot.
The gap for him, or even Dwayne Carter, there's a lot of D tackles I like in this draft, a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gap from that guy to Murphy or Newton there is a gap. I'm with you. I think that Murphy and Newton are much better, but the gap between Brock Bowers is literally almost 2 rounds. Like it's 2 rounds.
And I agree.
Like you might not see the next tight end until like 3rd round.
And that's my whole argument. They have shown that they're not willing to spend a premium pick on or they don't view it serious enough to actually do it. Because last year we were like, do something. You hadn't even had Wiley, the kid from UC, and they just refused. They neglected the position. And then you're like, oh, well, Tanner Hudson is a guy that we got to roll. So maybe, Zim, maybe I'll put my foot in my damn mouth and maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Maybe they'll shock me and they'll do something against the grain. To your point with the defensive tackles, and here's where I'll let Daniel get in, because Daniel's a big Carter guy. He's talked about some of the other defensive tackles. I think his favorite guy and the draft in the later rounds is Michael Hall Jr. Daniel, maybe you want to touch on that and talk about why you're so high on these guys that I'm not.
Yeah. So
can I say this real quick? The D tackle in itself, the value of D tackle and the way that Malik is laying out. Don't y'all think that the teams that are ahead of us are going to look at it the same way as well? Like don't you think that like a team that doesn't have a rankings and doesn't have a BJO, they'll be sitting there like, say you're the Bears and you don't have an edge at all. Like you can't just say, I want to take a luxury Brock Bowers because the value and the positional value of a verse and all these guys right there when you don't have a real edge. Like it goes, if you're going to use that argument, you have to use it for all the other teams as well.
Yes, but here's the thing. The way the
I'm
board
sorry,
is looking
Daniel, I
like
didn't want
it
to-
might shape up. Oh man, I feel like this is Drake versus Kendrick right now. I'm on fire.
But we
Zim
agree
is responding.
way more than what you think, though. That's the problem. It's not like I'm not saying. I think Murphy and Newton are dope. You think that Brock Bowers is ass?
Mm-hmm. No. You said what? You said I think Brock Bowers is ass.
Yeah, I mean that's what
No,
I'm
I
getting
never
from you.
said. Where have people started this discourse that I said Brock Bowers is ass? No, I'm saying the Cincinnati Bengals.
I'm messing with you.
Yeah, I know, brother. The Cincinnati Bengals have shown that, hey, listen, we don't view the tight end position to spend highly enough to spend a premium pick. Where I'm saying,
I hear that a
with some
lot,
of these-
bro. But they went for Kincaid. They wanted Kincaid, and if you're
Bro,
going to
if
say
they wanted Kincaid, they would have traded up for Kincaid.
Bills
If they wanted
jumped in
Laporta-
front of
listen,
them.
They threw Laporta high as hell, and they didn't do anything. They didn't.
Nobody
they moved.
thought that Laporta was going to go that early, bro. Nobody.
Everybody had Laporta on a second round grade on Laporta.
Okay, and we would have came around in the second round and said we'll catch him.
But that's my point. The Bengals had Greg Little.
That's a good point.
The Bengals had Greg Little, Cody Ford, all those guys viewed highly when that draft came. And you know what happened? They said, we're going to draft who we draft in the first round, and then we're going to try to make a move. We'll wait to see if these guys are around when it's time for us to draft. We'll call teams, we'll lowball teams, because we don't make trades unless we're absolutely fleecing teams and making them look stupid. They said, oh, can we move up for Greg Little? No. Can we move up for Cody Ford? No. And those guys flew off the board, and they were left just sitting there. And then that's when they made those statements. Well, you can't find right tackles on Walmart. Like, that's when they made those type of statements that they made. So they've played that game before. And the reason why I'm looking at the defensive tackle position, not 3-tech, the defensive tackle position, is because they've been literally trying to find that guy that they could build around for the last couple of years, and it just has not swung their way. It's not swung their way.
I'll
So
just say this,
they're
Malik.
faced with a situation because it is a quarterback rich draft class and a receiver rich draft class. They're faced with a situation where one of those premium defensive tackles that if it was any other draft class, they might not have a shot at, might be staring them in the face at 18. So you run to the podium. You make it easier. You don't overcomplicate it. Don't be Sonny Weaver Jr. from draft day.
All I'll say is this: Chris Jones, Kobe Turner, DJ Reader, Justin Matabuke. What do they all have in common? They were not drafted in the first round. I think we're saying that the defensive tackle has to be Geno Atkins, not drafted in the first round. These guys don't have to be taken in the first round. Like, I get that those guys might have some high upside, but I think there's plenty of guys that they could take. You even look at last year, Keanu Benton was another guy the Steelers took, wasn't in the first round, graded out higher than guys that were taken in the first round. I don't think that 18 just has to be defensive tackle. I think you can still get a good defensive tackle in the second or third round that can definitely make an impact.
And I agree with you. I think that even if there might be a premium player at offensive tackle, Ace, this is the one time where I actually agree with you, man. Listen, a lot of people, the discourse has been around defensive tackle, offensive tackle, and that's been about it. Obviously, Brock Bowers has been in the conversation, but no one's expecting to be there. But I think that receiver should get more light. I know there are a lot of people. I know Zim's guy is Latu, right?
The injury scared me, but
Yeah.
I do like Latu though. I like him a lot. I think he's freakishly crazy. In my mind, he could be like one of the, I'm sorry. I know Daniel was trying to talk.
Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
And I'm sorry. I didn't.
No,
I didn't
you're
wanna
good.
cut
You're
you
good.
off.
Where I view this whole conversation, I look at it, I kind of look at it this simply. I'm looking at the playoffs. I'm looking at the championship. I'm looking at the Super Bowl. My biggest concern with the Bengals isn't when Burrow's on the field. And that's for me when we're talking about Brock Bowers. I also view Brock Bowers probably lower than some people. Like, you discussed Brock Bowers as the best college, football tight end. My only concern with Brock Bowers, I think him as a yak guy is great. I think he's got great hands. But if we want to discuss him more as the slot guy too, I don't think he's on the level, like you look at first round wide receivers that came out, like you can talk about Garrett Wilson. You can talk about Jordan Addison, Marquise Brown. I think Brock Bowers is unique. But once again, my biggest concern is when Burrow is not on the field, what happens? And that's how I'm looking at round one, to be honest. I think offensive tackle sure is a conversation. I'm not willing to bet on these, some of these prospects like a Mims, like a Guyton. if I'm looking at Latu versus Byron Murphy or Jerzon Newton sitting at there, I picture in the Super Bowl, Chris Jones. I picture Aaron Donald. I picture the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they beat, the Kansas City Chiefs, their defensive line. That's what I'm looking at, to be honest. And that's where I'm having these conversations is, hey, I think versus Latu, Jerzon Newton, Byron Murphy, I think they can all change the face of a defense. And talking about the defense tackles, guys, I'm a huge fan of Dwayne Carter. I'm a huge fan of Michael Hall. I'm a huge fan of Leonard Taylor. Yep. If I were the GM, I would double up, to be honest. I would take either a defensive line round 1, then round 2, you can play around with the wide receiver, like a Roman Wilson, like a Keon Coleman. I would double up in round 3.
Like a Jermaine Burton.
Don't you think cumulative, like, don't you think in its totality, you have to walk out of this draft with 4 new trench guys? In my mind, yes. 2 on the offensive end, 2 on the defensive end.
Yes.
And
now where it comes, it's all strategy to me. Pause.
Yes. And that's where, to be honest, like, Brock Bowers is very good. Am I okay with letting him go to focus on the trenches? In my opinion, yes. Because once again, I'm looking at this team. I stack up their weapons right now, the Bengals. You can put them up in the top 5, top 10 in the NFL. I look at the end of the day, how many teams have a Joe Burrow? How many teams have a Patrick Mahomes? There's 3 to 5 quarterbacks in the NFL that can go out and win a game with Trent Irwin, with Trent Taylor. And I believe Joe Burrow is one of them. And I know you guys believe that as well. So for me, if I have Joe Burrow on my team, I'm focusing on the defense, to be honest. And that's how I view this. I'm with you, though. You need to go end the draft with at least 4 trench guys, interior offensive line, and the defensive tackle. I want at least 3 to 4 of those guys by day 2. That's how I view the draft, to be honest.
I got one quick rebuttal for that.
Yeah.
When Joe Burrow and the 2022 Bengals, I think, are severely underrated. I think it's one of the best Bengals teams of all time. If you really go look at it position for position. When they were on a 10-game win streak, my argument to you, I used to have this moniker, like this little saying I used to say, your offense is your defense. And that's not true for the most, like when you get to playoff football, as we learned in our 2021 season, when we went to the playoffs, the defense actually had to be the defense and step up. But in the 2022 season, the Bengals got out to a head start on teams like I've never seen a Bengals team ever do before.
Yes.
And it's a product of an extension of the defense in itself. They were plus 62. In the next person in the National Football League, I think was like plus 30 or something like that. It's an unreal number. And what happened is on a 10-game win streak, it put defenses it put the opposition in this compromising position. And every single week, why did you just throw that up? And then every single week, they were all trying to play catch up. And the only team that came out the gate and kind of gave them a little bit of something was the Tom Brady game or whatever. Bengals finally got the ball back second half, and then they came back and cooked. But generally, Burrow is a function of the defense. If you really think about it, when we play the 49ers, he gets out on them. He does stuff very early, and then Lou Anarumo is able to do what he does and put teams in a situation where now they're predictable and they're forced to pass. And scoring points and getting out on teams is a function of that. This past season, the exact opposite. Every single time that we couldn't stop the run, got behind on the scoreboard, Burrow was hurt. Unique situation, I get it. But we weren't able to put up points. Now all of your flaws, all the Trent Irwins of the world, they're now all exposed. In the AFC Championship game that you just brought up, the most glaring thing that sticks out to me in my mind is when Tyler Boyd went out and the Trent Irwins of the world were forced to go one-on-one and go beat people and not have Jamar Chase jump over top of 2 people or T. Higgins head top somebody on a 3rd down when it was time to really go and cook. Burrow could be the greatest guy on earth, but he needs help. The number one trend that I hate on the internet is this arrogance of Bengals fans sometimes, and I'm not saying that that's you. It's like this thought process to say, well, I've seen Burrow cook with this guy. Why can't he just do it with him? Because he doesn't have to. Great organizations always put the best resources behind their best people. And that's what you always must do, whether that's in the form of a tight end, whether that's in the form of a defensive tackle, whatever. I'm never going to shortchange them at the wide receiver or weapons at any point just because of my philosophical belief in defense wins. I want to make the defense good. I want to make the offense good. And at no point will I negate a position.
Completely. My one response to that is going to be, Like, you can't go wrong with either way. In my opinion, what I would do, like I said, my biggest concern for this team, yes, when Trent Irwin is on the field, you are going to have a big time problem. I'm really concerned when Burrow's off the field. In the AFC Championship, I want a guy that can go out and get Patrick Mahomes. That's what I want. And I think you can supplement what Brock Bowers would give you with a Mike Gesicki more than you can supplement a round one defense tackle. And that's just, for me, what I'm looking at. I don't trust Zach Carter if Sheldon Rankins goes down. I don't trust, Zach Carter if BJ Hill goes down. I would rather double up and get a defensive lineman round one. But that's where it's just a matter of preference. So that's, once again, my biggest concern with this team truly is, hey, when Burrow's off the field, what goes on with this defensive line? Because I think with the dominant defensive line, you can get away with so much with Lou Anarumo, and that's how I view it personally.
The only pushback I have for you, Daniel, is in that 2022, AFC Championship. Was our defensive line the reason that the Bengals didn't win? Because I don't think it was. I think when Tyler Boyd was out of the game, and I think when the offensive line we had hurt linemen, I think that had more to do with the loss than our defensive line not being able to get pressure against the Chiefs.
Yes and no. But once again, this is where I think you can look at getting a wide receiver in round two. I look at like a Roman Wilson. I think Roman Wilson could step in and easily not do what Brock Bowers could potentially do, but I think Roman Wilson could give you an elite slot threat. I think Mike Gesicki could do that. I also believe, in that game, T. Higgins was also dealing with an injury. Now you got T. Higgins right now who's fully healthy. So, yes, the defensive line definitely wasn't the main reason, but I think also a guy like Jerzon Newton, if you put him in there, a guy like Byron Murphy, I also think you have a different conversation as well. So, I'm just confident with the way that they're going to go about it. Hopefully, once again, I think you got to go out and get a wide receiver as well. And I think that wide receiver would definitely help this year. So,
and I don't want to pivot the conversation, because the conversation was if Brock Bowers, Byron, and Jerzon Newton is on the board, which in the reality, I think maybe one of those guys slide to 18 potentially.
Yeah.
I don't see a situation where they both are there. And I think we all know that. But I think when you really start to look into the flaws of the Bengals, and I think it almost leads into a different conversation about offensive line, I think the biggest loss of all was the whole right side was out. You know what I mean? When you talk about the tackle and guard combo, and Chris Jones absolutely wreaked havoc.
Yep.
And let's be real. Every NFL team, if they're truly building the right way, it does start in the trenches. But Brock Bowers is one of those cats to me that will be a top 5 guy in this class. And I think that's kind of the basis of where I kind of stand, right? Like, you're telling me, I understand Byron Murphy could be the first defensive player off the board. Okay, he really could. But if we really did this and we took all the labels, put positions outside of quarterbacks off of these players, Brock is probably going at the top, man. Like, if we're not looking at positional value, we're just looking at what a guy did in college and who he is, that guy's going at the top of the draft. You know what I mean? So I see both sides, though, for sure.
We've talked a ton about the first pick. We haven't even talked about the later rounds and what we want the Bengals to do. Mm-hmm. I'm actually curious to hear you guys' opinion. Obviously, the T. Higgins situation with the Bengals is what it is, and it's a spot where, if you read the tea leaves, the Bengals feel like they need to come away in the draft with a receiver. Mm-hmm. Who might be one of your ideal fits realistically for the Bengals in either the second or third round? Because I don't see them addressing the position after that. But is there a guy that you guys see maybe in the second round that, would be a great fit to this wide receiver room? Zim, Ace, go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at a guy that you're taking on day 2, I think a guy like Devontae Walker is a guy that you could look at. Jalen McMillan, who they've met with, I think is another good option. I think anybody that falls to the second round, similar to what we saw with T. Higgins, that isn't expected to be there, I think you could see the Bengals taking a look at, whether that's Xavier Legette or someone like that. So I do see them taking a receiver. I'm kind of in the minority in this, and people gave me flack on Twitter for this. I want them to double dip at receiver because, like, with the uncertainty of T. Higgins, with you not knowing what you have right now, a lot of people are downplaying the loss of Tyler Boyd, which I don't understand because Charlie Jones did not show us anything last year to give me any indication that we have the future slot receiver on the roster now. And with it being so loaded, I would want them to take two, like, maybe one on day 2, maybe another day 3, whether that's the late rounds, 6 or 7, a la kind of like the Andre Yosivas kind of situation. But I would want them to take 2 because I just think that this thing gets a little murky without T. Higgins there.
I agree. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Man, there's a couple guys I like day 2, man, that first of all, I think Troy Franklin could fall. Shouldn't fall, but I think he could, and he'd be a good option. Keon Cole could probably step right behind T. Higgins and mirror
Daniel loves Keon Cole, bro.
what T's doing, man. I think when you talk about Keon Cole, man, he really could be – he's probably not going to beat T. Higgins because he's a rookie, right? And he's got to still develop and become who he is in the offense. But I think Keon's a guy who could really step into T's spot and carry that on after he goes on, man. And you could still put Keon in the slot too. And then Jermaine Burton, man. I think maybe Jermaine's got some off-the-field stuff or some character things that – people are throwing out that always starts to come out in this time in the process. But I think when you really look at Jermaine Burton's game and you look at how he could fit in the Bengals offense, I think he is the perfect fit for this team. And I think he really could excel if he can stay out of trouble. And obviously the Bengals got the foundation and the culture set right now, right? So I don't have any issues or think that he would get out of line, but I think Jermaine Burton, man, might be the best fit of all receivers after day 2 of the draft.
My guy Trevor Sikkema and Dame Parsons, they raved about Jermaine Burton, and obviously, I mean, a lot of Bengals fans, when you mention Jermaine Burton, they throw up the X sign like, "Oh, we want to stay away."
Yeah.
You would hope the culture that Zach Taylor has been talking about, and y'all remember when he first got here, all he said was culture, culture, culture. Like, it's eventually going to break through. You would hope that the culture that you've been building for quite some time could afford to bring a guy on who maybe doesn't have like the cleanest background necessarily. Listen, I think Jermaine Burton, I saw him perform at Georgia. I saw him perform at Alabama. And he performed at Alabama even with weak quarterback play. I think Jermaine Burton's a true difference maker, man. So I love the fit that you talk about there. Zim, what are your thoughts?
I think, like this whole conversation to me is about like strategy, and I'm all about like, I'm a board guy. So it's kind of hard for me to say like, I want this guy because E made a good point. He said like Troy Franklin, like if I see him in a second, I'm running because I'm not thinking that, like I kind of address free agency the same way. It's not that I'm trying to like just kill it. Like I am trying to kill you in the draft, but at the same time, I'm trying to get the very best value at the point that I'm at without trying to jeopardize the rest of my draft capital to do so. If I have to give up limited draft capital and go get a guy that I feel really strong about, then I'll go do it. Right. But like for me in the second round, like it's just all about value. Like if Ladd McConkey gets anywhere near me, I'm going to go get him. If Troy Franklin falls back, like I just think you take him. In this, the way that I think too is like you develop a board, you put the guys that you want in whatever order they are. If Cooper, BB, Mahogany, or however the Bengals have it, as far as like the interior offensive line, if they had them higher up at that spot, that's where I'm going. Like it doesn't even matter what I did in the first. That's where I'm going. If I get to the first, like you talked about that board, hell yeah. I'm gonna tell you right now, I think that Murphy and Newton, I think one of those guys will be there, and I think Brock Bowers won't be that far away. That's the only reason why I'm bringing it up. I saw somebody say he won't be there. Go look at the Colts. They need a corner. They need a corner more than they lost their CB1. Mm-hmm. Go look at the Saints. Their left tackle is horrible. They need a tackle. Go look at the Broncos. They need a quarterback. All the teams that are in front of us, Malik is really setting the stage for the value of D tackle and defensive end and all the defensive players. You couldn't beat those teams. Like we put these placeholders on our team, like Trent Brown and Gesicki and all these guys in play so that we have the flexibility to do whatever we want. Some of these teams around us, some of the teams in our division, the Ravens are without three offensive linemen this past season. They don't have the luxury to say, I want to take a Brock Bowers. And go look at the teams that are in front of us. The Jets, I think that they'd be silly not to take a doomsday at that spot because you got Mike Williams on a 1-year deal, coming off a torn ACL. He's just on borrowed whatever. And you're telling me you're not going to give Aaron Rodgers the best wide receiving core that he's ever had?
Right.
Then you also have the same argument for the D tackles and stuff. I know I got a little off subject, but that's how I look at the wide receiver position. It's just whoever. I love Javon Baker if it's in the third. I don't like him in the second.
Right.
I like Lad McConkey if it's in the second. You know what I'm saying? I like Worthy if it's in the second. So there is a bunch of guys that
it's like Blake Fisher, yeah. Like I like Blake Fisher.
I like Blake. I like
him at 49.
Exactly. I like Blake Fisher in the third. You know, I like Bortolini. I like the center replacement. I don't think he matches our scheme. He's a little undersized zone blocking scheme, but I think he represents the Ted Karras replacement. I love him in the fourth. You know, like, and depending on how the Bengals have structured their board, that's kind of how I look at this whole thing. It's not about like, I love the question because it's great for, you know, for the discourse or whatever. But
for sure.
Would you take Brock Bowers over there? I think that it's just the board, the way that it falls. And I think that when the board falls that night, I think we might be looking at two different people that we say, okay, is this guy or this guy? I don't think it's going to be like this plethora of people because the teams in front of us don't have the luxury to skip out on offensive linemen. The teams in front of us don't have the luxury to not select the 4 quarterbacks, maybe 5 go in front of us. The teams in front of us, think about this. If all of those, everybody says Brock Bowers is gone or whoever you think is gone, Fuaga is gone, all that stuff like that, that means I got the best cornerbacks on the board when I go. I might take one of them. You see what I'm saying? So, like, it doesn't, to me, that's how my mind kind of works is like, I'm taking the best player available, and the Bengals have set it up for us so that it's really hard to mess this up, to me.
So even like edge, for instance, if there's an edge that at 18,
edge is tough. Edge is tough. I'm a big year one impact snap guy. Year one, you watch teams around the NFL, the Dalton Kincaid's year one impact, Bills go to playoffs. Zay Flowers, year one, Ravens go to playoffs. Year one, Laporta with the Lions. All the going thing for all of these guys is maximizing how much you can get off of these guys on their rookie contract. And if you got a guy sitting on the bench or sitting behind or trying to get snaps, it in a way it kind of hurts your chances. Now for the future, you're cool. You're like, yeah, we're stacked at the DN part, but there's just not enough snaps. You talked about the football analogy, or basketball analogy earlier, whatever. The Suns, I think that they got a good lineup. It's just only one basketball with all those scores. I know that Osai, like, you know, people might be down on him, but bro, how many chances is he even going to get the rock? He might get 200 snaps. You see what I'm saying? Miles Murphy, is that going to mess up his development? If I'm taking 200 snaps away him, if I go get a lot I get a verse, I got to take snaps from somebody. Is it going to be, I'm paying Sam Hubbard $10 million. Am I taking some of his snaps? So that's the conversation with the edge to me. It's not about, do I think that they're better? I think the Bengals got a really good problem. They got a really good edge room currently right now, but I just don't think there's a rock where everybody can't really just distribute that rock around there like that. And that's my only gripe with like the edge early. I wouldn't be opposed. If they took one of them edge dudes, I'd be like, let's do it. Right. But at the same time, you're going to be having a lot of games. You're like, damn. See, we only got 15 snaps. Like,
we started chatting about it. I got to get like
something.
We started chatting about it last night a little bit. But for me, one of my favorite players in this draft, he might be a little bit on the older side, is Jared Verse. I think Jared Verse is a game changer. I think he is a tone shifter. And while I like Latu, like you talked about, the medicals do scare me. And obviously he did medically retire. And it seems like that all is checked out. I know the Bengals defensive coaching staff was at his pro day. So I know that they were looking at the guy. I don't know if they would draft him. I don't have that information necessarily, but I look at it and I say, this is the 1 year, man, right? As we keep talking about guys that might fall, where you might have the luxury of a premium game changer on the defensive side. And I see people in the comment section saying, you can't draft, you can't draft, what did they say? You can't draft defense every single year. And it's like, if we're following that basis of best player available, and the best player available winds up being a defensive player, you owe it to yourself to probably draft that guy, because this is a Bengals defense that did finish as the 31st ranked defense last year. And you could point to other issues, whether it be communications or whatever the case may be. When we discuss and we start talking about the Bengals board shaping up and drafting best player available, I think everybody's on board with them drafting best player available. The issue is we've seen in the past the Bengals not draft best player available. We've seen them overthink it. So while everybody is saying in the comment section, yeah, draft best player available, everybody's in agreement with that, guys. Everybody here. But they have shown that they don't do that. And what I mean by that is it's not just drafting best player available in the first round. It's drafting best player available in the second and the third and the fourth. I think sometimes people think the NFL draft is just one round. And from the Bengals track record, the Jackson Carman pick was a wholly overreach. It was a wholly overreach. The Drew Sample pick was a wholly overreach. I think Jermaine Pratt was picked at the right spot, because if not, the Patriots were going to draft him. But I think when we look at it, there have been several instances to point to. Michael Jordan, they traded up for him, and I'll give them a little bit of a pass because they were coming in on short notice drafting guys, and that draft was just a complete shit show. But overall, I think that they haven't followed the board, so to speak. Sometimes they have drafted a guy a little bit too soon. And I'm not worried about the first round. I'm worried about the second, the third. You know, some people think the fourth round is a throwaway round. Some of my co-hosts might think that they don't think that the fourth round is that important necessarily. I think every round is important in the draft, because we've seen guys get drafted in the fifth round and wind up being quality starters. I think this is one time when it comes to the draft, you can't be asleep at the wheel. You can't be. You have to draft plus best player available. So when you talk about him, I'm aligned with you, man. Best player available all the way. I'm completely on board with that. The issue is, are the Bengals going to do that? Or are they going to reach? Are they going to panic and grab a guy because, they feel like they need to make a move? Like in the second round, if they don't draft an offensive tackle, are they going to reach and draft a Blake Fisher? Or, I know my producer, she's really into Kingsley from BYU. I'm not necessarily the biggest Kingsley guy. I mean, I think he's okay. I think he's fine. But are they going to draft him in the second round? Are they going to feel like they need to push the panic button and draft a guy that maybe is not the quote unquote best player available on their board? And I think that's where the conversation comes. But what I want to ask you guys is there a prospect in the draft? Not the first round. We've kind of talked about the first round at a nauseating pace, but is there a prospect in this draft in the later rounds that you guys think could be an absolute gem that maybe people aren't talking enough about? That if the Bengals pick, let's say in the third round, we have two picks in the third round. If he's there, you're like, run to the podium, and we're not talking enough about it. Ace, I see you smile, see you shake your head, so I feel you got a guy. Let me hear from you.
They gonna hate me for this, man, because I know a lot of people are Zach Moss fans, but if Trey Benson is sitting there in the third round, they need to run up to the podium and take him, because I just feel like he is the best running back in this draft class. The running back class itself is a little weak, but I think he stands, and maybe another guy stands at the top of that, and I think he's a true difference maker. I think it would be similar to when Joe Mixon came in and he was playing behind Giovanni Bernard and behind Jeremy Hill. And then that next season, he ascended to become the starter. I'm going to say him. I also would say, if you're talking about on the defensive side of the ball, Renardo Green, corner out of FSU, I'd be running up to put that ticket in.
Okay. And I want to answer my guy, Michael Judon, in the chat as well before I go to Eric. He says, and Brock Bowers, Malik, as best player available, how is that any different? We've literally just talked about it. We're looking at it. Brock Bowers probably won't be there. I think that's the entire discourse that we're having. I think that expecting, if he's as this big of a freak of a tight end that he's being made out to be the quote unquote greatest or one of the greatest tight ends to come out of college football, by all accounts, he shouldn't make it there. There are teams that have shown interest in him, like the Colts, like the Jets. So I'd rather deal with the world of realism, if you will. That's just me. I don't think he'll be there. And I'm not taking a shot. I'm just saying, and I think that Zim is thinking of the thought process that if he is there, they should go there. Even if he gets close to them, he would move up and I don't know if you.
I've been listening to you though. You know what's so crazy about this whole thing? Your argument is a strong argument for the teams in front of me have no business taking Brock Bowers because they're not in the position that we are in. Those teams that are like
those same teams have shown interest in taking him. Those same teams have done extreme amount of homework on taking him. So you can't say that the Jets.
That's all smoke though. I don't know.
You can't say that the Jets shouldn't take him because all signs point to the Jets taking him.
I think that the Jets are in a position that if their wide receiver goes down, then Allen Lazard is their wide receiver too. And you would be looking at a board with the second, third best wide receiver on the board.
Again, that's not me. That's not me. That's what the Jets have been showing. The Jets have been showing interest.
I feel like that Jet stuff is out there so much though. Because I think it's built to entice someone to trade up. That is like what I think. I think that Brock Bowers, the only way he goes before top 10 is if a team trades up. And I feel like all that Jet stuff is really based off of them trying to entice somebody to trade up and get out of the pick. I think the Chargers will be looking to get out of that pick as well too, because I think that they'll probably love Latham and they don't have to draft like all, you know what I mean? Like, or they don't have to drive Neighbors.
I actually don't.
Like, there's a lot of teams that are up at the beginning that I think wouldn't mind trading out because their rosters really aren't that good. The Jets, I'm trying to tell you, at that spot, your argument is the best argument for all these teams in front of me. Go look at their rosters. They're not in a position to skip out on the best D tackle. They're not in a position to skip out on the best D end. They don't even have.
But they might feel
the Miles Murphys in place.
For the last couple of all seasons, we've seen this exact Jets team overload at the tight end position, and then say these guys aren't working, and then fall. But here's one thing. Here's another move.
Even more of an argument. They already are paying a tight end.
Here's something you're not talking enough about, though. Where did the head coach of the Jets come from? He came from the Niners, right? The offensive coordinator has that background as well. Like you got to understand, they're probably looking at it as we probably need to go out there and get our George Kittle. We need to go out there and get our game-changing tight end. And I think that's what people aren't talking about enough. The best friend of a quarterback is a tight end. So maybe the Colts are looking at it and saying, we can help our young quarterback out because we already have Michael Pittman. We already drafted, what's the kid, Downs? Josh Downs last year.
Right.
We can help our young quarterback out by drafting a tight end. So, no, I don't think Brock Bowers is going to make it to the Bengals because I see those teams looking at it like, we need to pair either our young quarterback, if you're in the Colts situation, or the Jet situation. We need to get our George Kittle, and we need to pair him with our quarterback. And I think that's why I can tell you, I've talked to enough people. I genuinely don't think the smoke around Brock Bowers is smoke. I genuinely think the Jets are interested in him, and I believe that if he's there, they will draft him.
I do think that there's smoke there.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't think that's being taken into account is that you have to run a specific scheme to add Brock Bowers to your
100%.
team. You can't just be like, I'm taking him and plugging him in. But I do think that there are teams interested. But the way that he is utilized, not everybody can just take him and plug him in. That's one thing that I think needs to be said too.
I'll push back a little bit. I do agree with you saying. The only thing I'll push back on is in today's NFL, first of all, if Brock slides to 18, you run to the card. You run to the table. But I really hard time believing that they watched it since he was a freshman and they're not in love with the prospect. I really have a hard time believing that. If Brock is there, I'm telling you, I'm popping champagne. Wife don't know anything about ball, but she's popping champagne too. You know what I mean? So, but I can see both sides, but like,
I can see both sides.
I see both. I do, man. And I see a world where Brock could slide, but I also see a world where it's like, well, he's gone at 9 because
all it takes is one.
That's it.
Takes is one.
And I'm not trying to be mediator. I just think that's just kind of the way I feel about it.
All it takes is Aaron Rodgers to be like, I want Brock Bowers. And
it's I think if there is a slide, the slide is probably 15 max.
15, yeah, I agree.
I think
and if it gets to 15 and the Bengals don't make that, I'm telling you right now,
but Zim, they're not going to make that call.
I don't know that because
Brother,
they have
they're not going to make that call.
Bro, they have a compensatory pick that was given to us from the football gods. F that pick.
Not enough.
Respectfully, F that pick. I'm gonna tell you right now. Last year, the Steelers went from 18 to 14, and all they did was give up a 4th round pick. The Bengals need to say F that pick and send that drain up and go ahead and go get Brock. And I'm gonna tell you this, and the only reason why I'm telling you this, and I want you to look me dead in my eye right now, because we'll be celebrating, and we'll be popping whatever champagne that you want, and I don't care if you wear it or not. I'm sending you a Brock Bowers jersey, and you're gonna wear this damn jersey on this show, and we're going to a bowl. And that is my promise to you. Now, if we got Murphy or Newton, I think we're going to be awesome, bro.
And I'm going to send you a damn jersey. How about that?
I'm a cheer louder than everybody in the room. But I don't feel as confident about how clear this is. And I can't wait for that day to happen. If it does happen and Brock Bowers puts that jersey on, it's unstoppable, bro. You're not understanding.
No. I am understanding. I am understanding you. I'm just telling you.
Unstoppable with Joe Burrow.
This team ain't doing it. And you know what? I'll go there with you. I'll go there with you, Zim. Zim, if the Bengals drive Brock Bowers, and you know my track record speaks for itself, but if the Bengals do drive Brock Bowers, next time you in Cincinnati, shots on me. Shots on me.
Oh, we get shots down. Hey, I don't care if they draft Drew Sample 2.0.
Well,
We're getting the shots.
I care if they do that.
We're getting the shots in regardless. So.
I care if they do that.
I really do feel like, man, I feel like it's a good problem to have. I hate when people say it'd be hard for them to mess it up. They could mess it up.
100%.
I just think that the board, like, if you show me Murphy, Newton, even I'm not even mad at Mims because of the upside. Like, and I think even year one, you could put them in jumbo packages. There's like 7 dudes I wouldn't be mad at in the first pick. There's a bunch of guys later on that I wouldn't be mad at either or whatever. I really think it's really simple for them. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Somebody asked in the comment section, do you, All in Jay, my guy, I appreciate you supporting as always. He says, and I guess it's the part where we're going to start answering some questions. Daniel, we're going to start answering some questions now. But do you trust the offensive coaches to really scheme for Brock? We haven't even schemed crazy for Chase or Higgins really yet. I'll be the first to say it. No, I think that Brock Bowers, like Eric said, like Ace said, if he is in whatever team drafts him, you have to be ready to build a skill set around him. When I talked to Brock Bowers at the Combine, I was happy. He was very upfront. He did talk about his inline blocking, how he felt like he needed to get better at that. That's a prospect that I feel like is very open and aware of areas he needs to fix. You know, the playing weight is a big conversation amongst NFL circles. Okay, what is actually his playing weight? If he does get up to a bigger weight, will he still be the same player? There are some people that felt like he wasn't the same player after he got injured. I think that's all smoke and mirrors, whatever the case may be. But I do think that Brock Bowers would fit in a system such as, like, I know this is like easy to throw out there and they have no shot at drafting him, but like the Niners, right? I think the Niners are an ideal system that would make a lot of sense for him. I think that wherever Brock Bowers lands, you have to make sure you're also willing to call plays around his skill set, because he was used in a very weird way at Georgia. He did get into rounds. He's dynamic when the ball is actually in his hands. I don't think he has that big of a catch radius that, you know, of like a Mike Gesicki or something like that, but I still think he is dynamic when the ball is actually in his hands. And I feel like not all tight ends are created the same. They aren't. Not all tight ends are created the same. Zim, I see you laughing, bro. But like, if I'm being honest, he does not have a bigger catch radius than Mike Gesicki. He does not. Mike Gesicki is 6'6" and is an absolute unicorn on the field. Brock Bowers is 6'3". An undersized tight end who is great with the ball in his hand. He's good when you give him those check downs. He's good with the run after the catch. He's good with that. That's a fact.
Listen, I feel like I stated my claim for for Brock. I want this thing to really happen now. I really do. I can tell. I really do. And I just think that, like, you know what's so crazy? I understand your perspective on the whole thing, but if you really listen to this carefully, I'm going to say this point one last time. You're making a better argument that the teams in front of us have no business taking Brock Bowers. If you go look, name me the edge players for the Jets currently right now.
John, what's the dude's name? They drafted in the first round.
They signed the one. They signed. Hold on, let me go look. They signed whatever.
Jets edge rushers.
John
Jermaine
Franklin
Johnson.
Myers.
They have
John Franklin Myers.
Yeah.
Like, are you stopping drafting Gerald? You're telling me you're telling me verses like that. You telling me that you already pay money to Conklin and you got Ruckert already on your roster. You telling me you got the luxury to go take another tight end when the best edge possession might be on the board? That's literally the argument that you're making for the Bengals.
But
I'm gonna make it for
you're literally saying you're agreeing with me. Because listen to this. You're basically saying load up on the offense. F it. Let Joe Burrow cook. And they could be saying we've got 1 to 2 more years with Aaron Rodgers before this guy might retire. F it. Let's load up on the offense. Let's let Aaron Rodgers cook. You're saying the same exact thing.
No,
you are.
I'm saying I'm stockpiling. Remember earlier, I said I'm stockpiling.
But you're looking at it from a Bengals lens. You're not looking at it from the Jets lens. If you think that he's such a game changer and dynamic, the Jets have literally. It's like what I talked about with the Bengals. How the Bengals have been trying to find a defensive tackle for the last couple of years, and they haven't been successful at it, and getting their own guy that they can build. The Jets have been trying to do the exact same thing. It's the reason why they signed CJ Uzomah and the other tight ends, and a lot of them didn't work out and they moved on from those contracts. They have like a bunch of tight ends on their roster, and that's why they're probably looking at a guy like Brock Bowers and they're saying, oh, we're salivating. We could finally add a guy that we think is a difference maker and make our quarterback happy. He could be our quarterback's best friend.
They do that over Fuaga though. Like I get passing on the edge rusher.
Are you standing on the table and saying we don't need Fuaga? We got Elijah Vera Tucker. Like bro, they're not in a position to have a luxury. Like if tight end is the luxury that everyone is saying, you're not in a position. Their roster isn't good enough to do that.
But bro, the same thing that I said about Trent Brown and about Mike Gesicki is exactly what they're saying to themselves and why they added a Morgan Moses and why they made a big deal of that signing. They're looking at that saying, well, guess what? Signing Morgan Moses helped us and say we don't have to draft a tackle in the first round. We can circle back in the second round because guess what? They also picked before the Bengals again in the second round, and we could draft whatever tackle the Bengals might be planning to draft.
All right, so the Bengals fan that's sitting here right now that's saying, hey, look, I need offensive line first round. You would be sitting there looking at their roster and saying, well, Morgan Moses is longer in the tooth, and I don't really know how long he's going to be playing. I'll have a shot at getting Fuaga, and I could play him at guard. His arms are shorter. I'll just go Fuaga. It's the best offensive line on the board at that spot. You see what I'm saying? They're not in a position to go Bowers like that, bro.
So what I would ask is
but they will.
They might, but I think it's stupid. They don't draft well either.
And exactly.
It's stupid for them.
Trying to understand the Jets' philosophy is trying to figure out what I ate for breakfast this morning, right? It ain't going to happen. So I think when we're talking about it, I think you're looking at it from the lens of what could help the Bengals help Brock Bowers slide enough.
I think you're looking at it from the lens that you're like, I want to do everything to tell people why he should go there so that I don't have to worry about him going to the Bengals. I have
no hate in my body towards Brock Bowers.
You don't want him to go there.
Huh?
So, all right, let me ask you this. Are you taking Fuaga or Bowers if they're on the board right now?
Am I taking Fuaga or Bowers?
Yeah.
I'm taking Fuaga.
Daniel says he's taking Fuaga. I mean,
you're taking Fuaga, right?
Who else is on the board?
So think about this. You're telling us all right now that we should bank on the Jets being stupid enough to take Brock Bowers over Fuaga. And that's the main thing that we should be banking on.
I'm telling you, Zim, that the Jets picked up Morgan Moses and sold that to the fan base as if he's going to be their right tackle this upcoming season.
We did the same thing with Trent Brown.
100%. And guess what? It's not to pigeonhole yourself so you don't have to reach. So that way, if a Brock Bowers does fall, guess what? They could draft him. Like were I'm not doing mental gymnastics hoping Brock Bowers don't fall to the Bengals. I'm not trying to break the Bengals fan base heart. I'm being real with them. I'm telling you.
We're being real. He might not be there.
Don't we think that Brock Bowers, the pick for it wouldn't necessarily be stupid. It's almost like when the Lions picked Jahmyr Gibbs and the linebacker. Right. It's like, how good do you think this guy is? And if this guy statistically is one of the best tight ends we've ever seen coming out from college, I don't think it's a stupid move. I think it's stupid if he did fall to 18.
Well, the only reason why I don't think it's stupid. I think that they should take Brock Bowers and to put this into perspective too. I do think that Brock Bowers will probably most likely be gone. So it's not that I'm saying that this is the most realistic thing. Brock Bowers will be there at 18. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I'm making a case on why for the person that thinks that Brock Bowers might be there. it's a very realistic possibility that because of positional value alone, that he might be there because the teams that are in front of him don't have the luxury to go tight end. And that's my only argument. And if they go and they go pick up Fuaga or they go pick something else before, I wasn't saying that it's a stupid pick for them to go Fuaga, but I specifically asked him, who would you take, Fuaga or Bowers? And he wanted to say Fuaga.
No, I didn't say that.
What Daniel said Fuaga, right?
Yeah, Daniel said.
So then
What?
Okay, so now that we're saying Fuaga is better than Bowers, then we're supposed to bank on the hope of the Jets just being stupid enough to pick Bowers.
So let me go a step further, and this is my mic drop moment, and this is my last time. This is gonna be my last.
I'm good. I said everything I can say, so you got it, bro.
This is the last part I'll say regarding it. Everything the Jets have done this offseason, guys, whether you like what I'm saying, whether you like what Zim is saying, this is a fact. Everything that they've done this offseason has proven that they're in on the offense. Garrett Wilson is their number one. They signed Mike Williams to be their number two, right? Alan Lazard, number three. They added Tyron Smith as their starting left tackle. Morgan Moses, they tried to sell their fan base as a big signing, and they finally built the offensive line that they wanted. Morgan Moses, right? They went out there and they traded for my guy, Hassan Reddick, to be their edge rusher, right? So when you talk about the edge rushers, they feel like they got a premium edge rusher. Still got John Franklin Myers, still got Javon Kinlaw, still got their beast of a dude in Quinnen Williams. Ask me who they starting tight end on their roster is, Daniel. It's Tyler Conklin, man. It's Tyler Conklin, right? You mean to tell me this is a team that has tried to address the tight end position in the last couple of years with the various signings they've made? They've made it very clear to the rest of the National Football League, whether you want to come to terms with it or not, that we love this prospect. That's what they've said. They made no qualms about it. They've met with him. They've been to his pro day. They've done everything that they could. They've literally exasperated. You ever play NCAA growing up and you had a couple of a certain level amount of hours you could talk to a prospect? That's what the Jets have been when it comes to Brock Bowers. If Brock Bowers is there for the Jets, I believe the Jets are going to turn him the slip and he will be a New York Football Jet. And all the signings point to everything that we are doing is to appease to our future Hall of Fame quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. There ain't no hate in my body when it comes to Brock Bowers. And you guys have heard me say this on State of the Jungle several times. I think he's going to go on and have a fine career. Let's deal in Bengal reality, though. And the reality is there are going to be other people that are going to be there, like a Byron Murphy, like a Jerzon Newton, so on and so forth. And maybe even Ace's guy he's talking about, and Brian Thomas Jr. I have no idea. We're going to get a dog at 18. That's one thing that's certified. Regardless if we agree or disagree, whatever the case may be, we're going to get a dog at 18. I'm curious to see who that dog might be. But that's just my thought process, man. That's just my thought process on the whole thing. Last thing, guys, before we head out of here.
I definitely understand.
The last thing I want to say is, what are your expectations, right, for this draft? What do you want the Bengals to come out of this draft with? That I think that's just non-negotiable, that you're like, we need to do this in order to be successful heading into the 2024 football season. Ace?
They got to take an offensive lineman. I mean, there's no way, like, they would get killed on social media if they do not take an offensive tackle in the first two rounds. There's a way that they could do it with taking one, like maybe like you talked about Blake Fisher, Malik in the third, maybe someone like that. But if they don't take an offensive tackle in the first two rounds, I think there's going to be a riot. They have to take one.
And I'm fearful about the reach on that too, Ben. You know, I to be honest with you, I'm kind of fearful about the reach on that, because I do think that, you know, there's always that moment in the draft where teams see a run on offensive tackle or run on a certain position, and everybody just starts running to the podium and grabbing those guys. It wouldn't shock me if Blake Fisher went early on day two. It wouldn't shock me at all, man. And I'm just like, all right, well, you know, if Blake Fisher's gone, that means Kingsley's probably gone at that point too. So like, it just makes you wonder. Zim, what is your outline for the Bengals draft?
There's got to be an impact early and often. First and second round, I need those guys to be starters. Like for the first time, I think last year I was really, really high on the roster. I think that when Burrow went out, I think the good takeaway that I took from it is it got a chance to illuminate the flaws. So like when you talk about the D tackle or you talk about different spots on this team, whether it was the pass defense in the secondary, all these different things got illuminated. And now I'm at this point where I need impact from the last year we were like, yeah, we're drafting guys and these are guys that are going to be behind somebody. Not this year.
Right.
Like I need instant impact. Like whoever's drafted in round 1 and 2, they need to be starting. Like I need like as early as week 1. And now what you classify as starting, heavy rotation. If that's Murphy, if that's Newton, whatever, I need that guy to play right away. If it's the guard or whatever, at least like if that's in the second or if that's in the third, I need that guy to at least be NFL ready to go at a minimum. I'm not talking about no projects, none of that. I just don't think that the roster is at the level it was like the last 2 years. I do love what they did in free agency. I just don't think that they have the luxury to say we're going to bring guys through our farm system and let them grow within, or they can't change positions if they see a tweener or something like that. They need to draft guys that whatever they did good in college, let them keep on doing really good in the NFL. No switching sides, none of that stuff. If Mims is a tackle, play him at a tackle. Like I'm not drafting a tackle to play him at guard. I'm not doing any of that stuff. If Latham is the guy, whatever, I'm playing him at tackle. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's got to be really cut and drive, and I think that'll give us the best opportunity to succeed throughout the draft in high impact. And I need to walk out of here with 4 guys in the trenches. And the crazy thing about that, I don't know if people thought that, because I think a lot of this was framed like I'm super pro Brock Bowers, which I am. I am the CEO of the Brock Bowers fan club. But at the same time, the biggest takeaway for me is the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm so invested in heavy impact early in the draft. And so he represents a spark plug and somebody that plays really, really early and is an impact day one. Whether you got Gesicki on the field with him at the same time or not, they're different. And he will play a lot of snaps. The rest of the draft, even if it's not him, forget him. It doesn't matter about that. The guy at the beginning has to be impact, but I need to walk out of here with 4 guys in the trenches. And that's the overall theme, is they can't skip that position. We got our butts whooped in the North in the trenches last year. So however they do it, whatever strategy that they use, they need to make sure that they walk out of this draft with 4 really good quality trench guys.
Agreed. I think they need to maximize it. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Real quick, I want to mention my 3 guys that you asked about earlier that I really like. One guy, I don't think the Bengals should take him, but Cameron Kitchens, the safety out of Miami. I know a lot of people are down on him after his testing, but I think he'll be he'll be really good in the NFL at the next level. When you look at Bengals, man, a position we don't really talk about much is linebacker. Maybe I don't know how far Junior Colson falls, or a Cedric Gray type player could be a really good fit there. And then when you look at the tight end, well, actually I'll go corner. When you look at the corner position, Kamari Lassiter, man, the depth for the Bengals at corner, man, is kind of scary. It really is, man, when you really start peeling the layers on the onion. And that's something that will need to be addressed. And I think Kamari will be really good at the next level, man, whether it's outside or in. I know he ran a little bit slower than we like to see, but I think he's that kind of player. He's got that dog mentality. Now, when I talk about what I want to see the Bengals do in the draft, really is very simple for me. They cannot leave this draft without a tackle and 2 interior offensive linemen, man. They got I think 3 guys on the offensive line, maybe even more than that. No, they got 3, I think, that are 2 years or under left on their contract. They have to build depth. When you rewind and you go back and you watch that championship game against Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Jones absolutely annihilated those boys. I'm not expecting a rookie to come in and be, freaking all pro, but we need serviceable backups. And if a guy goes down, man, we need somebody to be able to play that spot and give Joe time. So for me, tackle, 2 interior offensive linemen, man, and you build that depth out on the roster, and then you really talk about widening that Super Bowl window for the next 5 years to come.
100%. And somebody asked, they wanted us to make sure we answered their question. Somebody was saying, essentially the last 2 years was Bengals lost in the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl because of, the inability to protect Joe Burrow in the interior of the offensive line. And Jared, I hope I'm getting to your question correctly. You said it was not because we didn't have an elite tight end. Why are we avoiding the trenches? I don't think the Bengals are necessarily avoiding the trenches. I think that this could be a year to Eric's point, to Ace's point and Zim's point, where they could actually address the offensive line trenches. I think that this upcoming season, Cordell Volson should come in with some competition. I think the board is going to shape up that way, whether it be a Cooper Beebe, who I'm super high on. Zach Frazier is my guy out of West Virginia. There are a lot of prospects there that I think that can really push, the depth on the Bengals interior offensive line and make it better. And I think the important thing to talk about too, just beyond, just this year, the Bengals have 3 free agents on the interior offensive line coming up. So like you need to make sure that you have a contingency plan in place, because Cap is going to be a free agent. Karras is going to be a free agent. And I think that this draft is rich with interior offensive linemen that could help this team. So, Jared, I appreciate the question. And, I'm going to take a page out of Zim's book. He said what he took away. What I took away from this stream that we did here, man, is that Bengals community has a bunch of kick-ass creators, man. And I don't think that's a secret at this point. You can follow these guys on social media. I'm sure you already do follow them on social media, whether it be the Cincinnati podcast, and so much more that you guys are doing. If you guys want to shout out everything that you guys are doing, because this can't be the last time that we do this. I feel like we should come together a little bit more often and talk about things, because we don't necessarily agree on everything all the time. But I think our common goal is always the same, which is we want to see the Bengals bring a Lombardi trophy to Cincinnati, whichever way that looks like. I got a lot of respect for everybody that is on this stream, obviously, here, man. And, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I love the fact that you guys keep the Bengals community engaged, obviously, with your spaces. I know, Eric, I heard you retired or something like that from that, man.
I took a step back, for a little bit, man. I think I got
get back into the fire, brother.
We back,
back into the fire.
Man. We back.
I think I might join y'all on a few this upcoming season, although I hear Ravens fans are a little crazy. So
crazy. They crazy.
We'll see, or as Zim calls them, the purple people. But y'all crazy, man. Anyway, man, we appreciate y'all for tuning in. We'll have to do this again after the draft, guys. It's just to chop it up, right? So to see how the Bengals shake out. We hope that you guys enjoyed this live stream. Is there anything else that you guys want to say before you guys head out? Are you guys?
What's your jersey size? What's your jersey size?
What's my jersey size? Extra large. What's your jersey size?
I got you. Saying.
Bet. It's a bet. It's happening. But we appreciate you guys so much, man, for tuning in. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And until next time, who dat?
Who dat, man?